Welcome everybody to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends. Today we're going to be talking to Shoykat Chakrabarti. Now, Shoykat, by the way, I want to ask him, has anybody pronounced your name correctly since you started running for office? Because he's running against Nancy Pelosi, which is quite, a feat. But that being said, she's also like 114 years old. So there's been a lot of talk about gerontocracy lately. Might mean that he has a decent shot at it. But anyway, so we're going to talk to him. He's got an amazing background. First of all, he was a co-founder of Justice Democrats with me and Cenk and a few others, right? He also was AOC's chief of staff for years, but he also got his start. He was actually in Silicon Valley, and he worked on like engineering the payment processing for Stripe.
That's right,
There's been a wide array. Like, he probably knows a bunch of these tech asshole billionaires. He's been in the rooms of left-wing politics at the highest level. Now he's running for office. So there's a lot of stuff we could talk to him about. I'm really excited for that.
He's also involved with this think tank called New Consensus, and he's been part of the abundance debate.
Really?
So Ezra Klein brought him and Zephyr teach out on
to create. I remember this. Yeah, you're right.
To do like the critique from the left, and Zephyr is very much like the antitrust, anti-monopoly piece, and Shoykat, like, obviously he embraces that as well, but he has more of like this sort of, he's Green New Deal, so it's like it's like FDR for the modern era. And so I thought he did really well in that podcast. I didn't think actually that Zephyr did that great in that podcast, even though I have a lot of respect for her, but I thought he did really well in terms of articulating his views. So anyway, deep thinker, interesting guy, been in all kinds of interesting spaces, is doing something really important right now and challenging Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. So excited to talk to him.
So everybody sign up below on Substack so you'll get the full interview, not just like the little clips that make it to the Secular Talk YouTube channel. Again, sign up right below. It's right underneath me here. Substack. $5 a month gets you every interview, gets you a day early. So definitely do that. But before we get to the interview, we have yet to talk about, Crystal, Zohran laying the smackdown on Andrew Cuomo.
That was fun to watch.
Yeah, we were watching it while we were driving to D.C., getting like little bits and pieces, little clips on social media. And man, it felt good. I haven't felt anything like that since like Bernie was winning primary states.
I know. I know. I've been waiting to allow myself to have any hope in this race.
Don't do it.
No, see, I'm different than I like to have the hope. I like it.
Do you?
I like to get my heart broken.
I like to be dead inside, personally.
So,
filled with ice.
So yeah, he not only did he do really well, but Cuomo did really shitty. So both of those things were great, and there were some fascinating moments where, by the way, also AOC after the debate
endorsed him.
Jumped in, endorsed him, so she's in, and it's ranked choice voting there. So not only is she backing Zohran, #1 choice, but she says don't rank Cuomo at all, which is also really important, kind of like progressives coalescing to try to block Cuomo. So that was significant.
Yeah, that's a big deal because people were questioning, is she going to do it? Is she not going to do it? And what that says about her viability for the future in terms of how principled she'll be. And she came through. She did the thing we all want her to do. So let's start with this clip. This is Zohran talking about freezing the rent.
If you are one of the close to 2.5 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized housing, I will freeze your rent. And I will do that because you have a median household income of $60,000 while your landlord profits have increased by 12%. This is an act that will bring nearly $7 billion back into your pocket and back into the pockets of our local economy. This is what we will do immediately, and we'll do so because the mayor has the power to. Even though there are those like Andrew Cuomo on this stage who will tell you it's unrealistic, we know the previous mayor actually did this 3 times. And on top of this, we're going to build 200,000 truly affordable homes. Homes that are for the New Yorker who has a median household income of $70,000 for a family of 4. We'll do this while taking on the very bad landlords and the real estate developers who are funding Andrew Cuomo's campaign, $2.5 million last time I checked. And we're going to do that because ultimately every single person needs to follow the law, and that includes the landlords who are violating our housing code and have $800 million in fines that the city have yet to actually collect on.
I like that.
So here's why I love this. Not only is it populist and progressive, it also is one of the things that the abundance assholes say they care the most about, right? He said, we're going to build we're going to freeze the rent and build 200,000 more homes.
And not only that, he doesn't say it in this clip, but I've looked at his housing policy, and he has a bunch of the reforms that the abundance guys talk about. So they talk about the single staircase reform so that you don't have these requirements of having like a bunch of staircases. It makes it easier to build. Those sorts of things he has embraced. And so it has been really revealing that many of the abundance people, I'm thinking Matt Iglesias in particular, they absolutely hate him, even though not only on housing, but also on things like small business regulations, he's all abundance. There doesn't have to be. In fact, it makes sense to have together a coalition of like, yes, let's build and let's have state capacity and let's strip back anything that isn't necessary in terms of like building out and reducing cost of living for people alongside a progressive, anti-billionaire vision. So the fact that they are so opposed, many of them, to him and hate him so much and would like to return Andrew Cuomo, who is a provably failed governor of a state that they are very critical of the Democratic governance of, that they would put him above someone who was embracing all of their agenda. It really does sort of expose what this project is all about, which is ultimately in conception in terms of what they're using it for politically. They're using it to try to block the left and forestall any sort of reckoning with the billionaire coalition within the Democratic Party.
So the abundance guys who support Zohran, they are good faith actors, and you can work with them.
Yes.
Right?
So I interviewed Marshall this week, for example.
And he fits
Marshall's
in that category.
pro-Zohran.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Great. The abundance people who are against Zohran, it proves the point. It proves the criticism that these are just rebranded neoliberals. So the whole purpose is just an anti-left, anti-progressive politics, trying to rebrand centrism from within the Democratic Party, trying to put a new coat of paint on it and make it seem sexy. That's the idea. And by the way, they just had that, centrist abundance
Welcome Fest
event in D.C. called Welcome Fest. And there are a bunch of clips coming out of there which further validate that this is just rebranded neoliberalism and centrism at a time when we need the opposite of that. We need to go left, right? So there was that clip of, I think it was Josh Barrow.
Josh Barrow, yeah.
He was bashing unions, saying like, oh, they're the ones who actually block the progress. Whenever you get down to the bottom of it, it's always the unions that are blocking progress. There was stuff about welcoming Elon Musk back into the fold.
Oh, that was at Welcome Fest?
You had Alyssa Slotkin saying stupid-ass Alyssa Slotkin shit. Remember, she's former CIA. Former Bush administration.
There's no such thing as former CIA, by the way.
Facts. But also former in the Bush administration helping with foreign policy. So, don't fall for the gimmick. This is just rebranded neoliberalism, rebranded centrism. As I said, the ones who support Zohran, at least they're good faith, and there are areas of agreement. But the ones who are drawing a line and saying never Zohran, they don't even care about the shit that they say they care about. Because here you have a populist progressive who's solidly on the left, but he also agrees with some of the abundance proposals, and is better than Cuomo on those abundance proposals, and they don't care. They don't support him, because really it's an anti-left thing. But now let me get to the next clip, because this clip is honestly probably my favorite from the night. It shows how good of a debater Zohran is. Check this out.
Mr. Mamdani, you have said that Mr. Trump's Department of Justice can't be trusted, and that was after the news broke of Mr. Cuomo's alleged reported DOJ investigation. First, quickly, just a yes or no answer. Do you think that President Trump is unfairly targeting Mr. Cuomo?
No, I don't think that it's unfair, but I have no interest in believing that they're actually pursuing justice.
Okay. Second part of my question.
And to be clear, it's not unfair because Andrew Cuomo did lie to Congress, but ultimately we know that the Trump Justice Department and the Trump administration as a whole is interested more in vindictiveness and persecution of political enemies than in anything to do with justice.
Okay. So moving forward, you are also a socialist. And because of that, why wouldn't President Trump target you and by extension target New Yorkers? You have 1 minute.
President Trump will target whomever is the next mayor of the city. President Trump even targeted his, in many ways, accomplice, Mayor Eric Adams, who has collaborated with the Trump administration at almost every opportunity. And still, in the midst of that collaboration, we saw that New Yorkers are being taken off the streets in their apartment building lobbies. We have $80 million being taken out of our city bank account. So I don't think there's any question that there's any mayor here that will be free from being attacked by Donald Trump. What's more important, however, is that we have a mayor who will actually fight back. And that's what I will do. I am Donald Trump's worst nightmare as a progressive Muslim immigrant who actually fights for the things that I believe in. And the difference between myself and Andrew Cuomo is that my campaign is not funded by the very billionaires who put Donald Trump in D.C. I don't have to pick up the phone from Bill Ackman or Ken Langone. I have to pick up the phone for the more than 20,000 New Yorkers who contributed an average donation of about $80 to break fundraising records and put our campaign in second place.
Okay, Mr. Mamdani, thank you. Mr. Cuomo, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, please. Mr. Mamdani is very good on Twitter and with videos, but he actually produces nothing. For him to accuse me of lying He also called President Obama a liar and said President Obama was evil. So take everything with a grain of salt. Donald Trump would go through Mr. Mondami like a hot knife through butter. He's been in government 27 minutes. He passed 3 bills. That's all he's done. He has no experience with Washington, no experience in New York City. He would be Trump's delight.
All right, brief response, Mr. Mamdani, then we have to move on.
Look, it's true that I don't have experience with corrupt Trump billionaires who are funding my campaign. I don't have experience with party politics and insider consultants. I do have experience, however, with winning $450 million in debt relief for thousands of working-class taxi drivers and actually delivering it to the working-class people.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
I mean, that was just... he annihilated him.
Yeah.
He beat him down.
The way he flipped that on him was so perfect, and also shows an instinct for like going for the jugular, which is not something you always see on the left.
You almost never see
something that, you know, Bernie kind of struggled with. So he says, yeah, you have experience at being a corrupt insider. Like, I'm the exact opposite of that. That's exactly why you should vote for me. And Cuomo is running this very, you know, standard playbook of like, I've been here and you know me and I have the experience.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's an anti-Semite is another part of his pitch.
Right.
And
we'll get to that.
You know, in basically any other year, he would be a lock-in. Like, that would be a lock. That would work. It would work very well. In particular, it would work well in New York. I mean, Eric Adams, you know, was the establishment pick and ran this very sort of left-punching campaign, and it was effective. Things are different now. And the fact that Zohran even has a shot at all, and Cuomo's still the favorite, like, don't get me wrong. The fact that Zohran has a shot at all shows you how different the Democratic base is and how disgusted they are with establishment Democratic leaders who have failed to stop Trump, have failed to stand up to Trump, and have in many instances, like with Eric Adams collaborating with the Trump regime, have actively capitulated to Trump. And so that means that, you know, this standard playbook that Cuomo is trying to run, and very ineffectively too. I mean, he was really like not impressive in this debate whatsoever in his exchanges with Zohran or in his exchanges with anybody else. This standard playbook does not have as much traction as it used to.
Yeah, the elitist snobbery of doing like, I'm experienced and you're not.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, dude, you're experienced at what? Killing grandmas? Because when they had COVID in nursing homes, you're the one that signed the order that said get the COVID positive patients back into the nursing homes, and then like everybody's fucking grandma in New York died.
Yeah,
that's what you're experienced at, you asshole.
And then covering it up and lying in a report,
repeatedly.
Which was which is what the Trump administration is investigating him over, and what Zohran is correctly saying, like, well, he did lie to Congress. Like, that part is completely correct.
And then Zohran also did something brilliant, which is when he flipped it back on Cuomo, he put Cuomo in the Trump camp. He said, yeah, you're right. I'm not experienced at taking money from corrupt pro-Trump billionaires. And that is a trick that leftists need to start using more, is that a big knock against the centrists is that they are the MAGA collaborators.
Right.
They are the ones who genuflect at the altar of Trump or bend the knee or semi-bend the knee.
Or take money from the same people, like he said.
Yes.
Yeah,
and what the base wants right now is, are you going to fucking fight this guy? Are you going to stand against everything that he stands for? And you're only getting that energy from the left. But the left needs to make that clear and tie that to the centrist. Taint them with, you are semi-MAGA. You are sort of like Trump. You are willing to cut bipartisan deals and negotiate with absolute fascists and robber barons. And that, I think, is something the left has gotten better at recently, which in the past they weren't nearly as good at. And I think that pays dividends with your normie resistance liberals.
Well, and you can see there how Cuomo is trying to position himself. He says, like, oh, Trump, he would be Trump's delight, which is hilarious verbiage. But in any case, they're all trying to position themselves as the one who would be the toughest against Trump, and which is, you know, interesting in and of itself. And in previous years, the left had kind of a disadvantage there because they tied them to like, oh, they're, you know, critical of the Democratic Party, so really they love Trump.
Exactly.
And now that has really flipped. Where people have seen, no, the people who are standing up and fighting against Trump the most aggressively are Bernie, are AOC, are that wing of the party, which is why there has been this radicalization within the Democratic base, which is reflected in the fact that Zohran even has a shot in this race whatsoever. I also, there's a Republican councilwoman, have you been following this, in New York City, who has been calling for Zohran to be deported.
Oh yeah, I mean, it says it all, right?
But, and I think she's giving him such an assist.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, when you are attracting that kind of ire from the right, you're proving that you're the one that they are angry about. You're the one who's treating them. You're the one that's fighting against them. And so I think that's been helpful to him in a way.
Absolutely. Now, I got one more clip for you. I have to show you this. This is an amazing clip on Israel. Take a look.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
He won't say it has a right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very clear.
And his answer was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that very
That's what he was trying to say.
No. Unlike you, I answer questions very directly.
All right,
and I want to be very clear. I believe every state should be a state of equal rights.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the part of that, it was viewed as crazy that he's like, I think every state should have equal rights.
Right.
And that shows how far this country has fallen, that this ethno-fascist regime is just taken as like a given. Like, of course you should have an ethno state. Of course you should have an apartheid state. Of course you should have
sort of
a racial hierarchy.
That you won't be like, yes, I love ethno states. And the whole setup of that is crazy because they're supposed to be doing a lightning round where everyone just gives a one-word answer about what is the first country you would visit after you're elected mayor of New York, which is a weird question anyway, and clearly is trying to set up exactly this exchange. So everyone else gives their answers, Colombia, I'll go to Israel, I'll go to Israel and Ukraine, just like LOL. And then they come to him and he gives a great answer, which is, I'm going to be here in New York, like fighting for New Yorkers. That's why I'm here. And so unlike anyone else, everyone else just got to answer the question. The moderators jump in.
Will you go to Israel?
But will you go to Israel?
Yeah.
And he's like, I will meet with Jewish voters here in New York because that's where, that's who I'm representing. And then it's, do you support not just Israel's right to exist, but Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state?
So in other words, are you against democracy and are you against secularism?
Yes.
To which he says, no, I'm in favor of equal rights for all.
And
they're like, oh!
Are you in favor of Jewish supremacy?
Right.
That's what they're asking. And he's like, I'm in favor of equal rights for all. And they act like this is such a devastating blow to him. And you know what? This again speaks to this out of date, truly, it really is actually an offensive assumption that all Jewish voters would think that your number one priority has to be asserting the right of Israel to be a Jewish supremacist state.
Right.
And that if you're crosswise on that, then you're dead in the water as a New York City mayoral candidate. And we know
it's the opposite.
That is just not the case of where many, many, many Jewish voters are. We saw the poll of AOC versus Chuck Schumer in a hypothetical matchup among Jewish voters. She was winning. And, AOC is not always where I am on Israel, but she is certainly much more critical than Chuck Schumer has been. There was a poll of Zohran versus Cuomo among Jewish voters, and he was outperforming among Jewish voters versus how he was doing in the population at large. So it is this incredibly, frankly, anti-Semitic caricature of Jewish voters that they would all march in lockstep on this one particular issue and demand that you commit to visit Israel out of the gates and assert that they have, the right to maintain as a Jewish supremacist state.
Cuomo is helping Netanyahu with some of his legal cases. He is an anti-Palestinian bigot and a genocide supporter. That's the true thing that is shameful in this conversation, is everybody up there who will not tell the objective, factual, empirical truth about what's going on in Gaza.
Yeah.
That you have just a war of annihilation and extermination. You have hospitals and schools and UN buildings being bombed. You have paramedics being murdered, bulldozed, and put into a mass grave, and then Israel lies about it. You have humanitarian aid centers where, as Palestinians go to it, Israel unloads on them and kills them. Let's stop pretending like this isn't what it is. I'm sorry, but they're stupid little tricks where they try to play the fake offended game. Oh, you believe in equal rights for a state? Oh! Shut the fuck up forever. Forever. Times have changed. They're not going back. You guys are the equivalent of people who supported apartheid South Africa. That's what you are. And if it's only him up there saying, hey, I support equal rights, to your point, I think that's going to go over well for him.
Yeah.
I think people are going to be like, yeah, equal rights for all. I've always made that point, too, is like, you could either support secular democracy or you can support an ethno-state. It's one or the other. Do you support secular democracy or not? I wish every country in the world was one version or another of a secular democracy. I am against ethno-states, full stop. I don't care who's at the top of the ethnic hierarchy and you're given ethno-state. Fuck that shit, right? And again, for him to point that out, it's like, Thank God. It's like he's in the Twilight Zone, right? In a bad dream, and everybody around him is a psychopath.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Right. And I liked everything about how he handled that and how he talked about, I will meet Jewish voters where they are, acknowledging that they are complete human beings with a variety of interests, going about their lives in the city and concerned about things like rent and affordable groceries and public transit, just like everybody else. And so, yeah, I thought that exchange, I thought he handled it beautifully, and I thought it was outrageous and incredibly revealing the way the moderators conducted themselves and the way that other candidates on the stage tried to jump on that like that was some horrific admission from him.
Hey guys, you don't want to miss this week's episode of Crystal, Kyle, and Friends. We had on Shoykat Chakrabarti. He's a co-founder of Justice Democrats with yours truly. He's AOC's former chief of staff, and now he's a congressional candidate running against Nancy Pelosi. So he's got a lot of fascinating things to say on all the different issues. Like I said, you do not want to miss this. Sign up below on Substack for Crystal, Kyle, and Friends.